Very bad news from Switzerland for the village Brienz. They have declared phase red again. They just did this from orange to red. Why did they do this? Danger of an imminent major landslide that is threatening the village with imminent destruction. It's a scenario of a major landslide that is expected. In the last few weeks, the residents, and the residents only, it wasn't even allowed that the Swiss television was entering the village with a resident. That wasn't even allowed. But Phase Orange allowed direct residents to enter the home during the day for a short period of time to check whether everything is okay. I don't know, get belongings or just check their homes. But the problem was, while the residents were doing this, they discovered more cracks in the home's walls, on the floor, because not only the mountain is coming down more and more, threatening a major landslide to bury the village of Brienz like it happened to Blatten. But also Brienz sits on a plateau that is constantly sliding down. So more and more authorities and even villagers maybe come to the conclusion that they might have to resettle, build the village of Brienz nearby, somewhere else. They have also determined a field where they would like to do this. You see the pictures here. But let's talk about the phase red. Why are they doing this? What is the new data? What is the new information? What do they think will happen? What is imminent? So in the canton, that's like a province, Graubünden, that's where the village of Brienz in that valley, where it's located, it's threatened with imminent destruction, with a major landslide. That's what authorities have declared. So they're returning to the red phase. This means Brienz is closed off. It may not be longer entered regularly until further noticed. The area above the village of Brienz has accelerated significantly already since last winter. And in the past 6 weeks, it got really critical due to the spring and now early summer rainfall, because that acts like a lubricant for these rocks that are becoming loose and are slowly already moving towards the village, towards catastrophe. And we know Brienz had a landslide already. You see the pictures. It narrowly missed. The landslide stopped at the schoolhouse of Brienz. Since then, they had to be evacuated again and again. And now they have been evacuated for a very long time. Guys, you have to imagine they're out of their homes since November last year. And residents are devastating, as you can imagine. So since Monday, the Graubünden village of Brienz has been closed again. No one is allowed to enter the village because 600,000 to 2.2 million cubic meters of rocks are at imminent risk of collapsing, of coming down rapidly at the village. And once it's on the move, there is no time to evacuate anymore. If you have seen what happened to Blatten, if you haven't, I have a playlist, you have to see this. That monstrosity of a, how they call it, once in a millennium landslide took only 40 seconds to bury the village. By the way, check out my update video about Blatten. You won't believe this. They call it now Blattensee. The village, they call it Lake Blatten. And the rocks, the mountain's still coming down. There's a new video how that mountain's coming down again with a big dust cloud. So it has significantly gotten worse there right now. Check out my video. It's in the end screen, guys. So 600,000 to 2.2 million cubic meters of rocks are at risk of collapsing. And over the course of the week, geologists have been calculating the exact implications for the village. And the situation has worsened significantly. That's their takeaway, because the rainfall in early May and the holiday weekend. So the municipal leadership has announced last Friday already that the village was no longer open to entry until further notice. So now orange phase has been replaced with red. Population remains evacuated. Nobody can return to their homes. And I mean, I think by now everyone has everything out of their homes that is valuable that they do not want destroyed. I want you to look at that graphic, at that picture here, where they have made it clear for us what is happening at that slope, at that landslide. So the eastern part has acutely accelerated. The eastern part of the plateau, that's what we see in light blue. And it's estimated to have a volume of approximately 600,000 cubic meters. The eastern island, how they call it, that's what we see in light green, is a remnant of the debris flow that occurred in 2023. I have reported about that. And then we have how they call it the upper debris dump. That's the light beige area. It consists of material that fell after the big 2023 landslide. And it has a volume of approximately 1.2 million cubic meters. And that sits on rock and debris, on a debris cone that is already not stable. So we have seen this in Blatten. If something falls on something, it could accelerate the downfall of what's underneath it. So in the worst case scenario that could happen here, guys, 2.2 up to 2.2 million cubic meters of rock could crash in the village or even into the valley. And let's compare this to Blatten. How lined out at a length of 2.1 kilometers. This is absolutely crazy, guys, within 40 seconds. That's how massively it has spread in Blatten. Even on the other side of the valley, there was a photographer that filmed this wall of dust coming towards him. And then he decided, I better leave. He got into his car and he drove away because it was coming up towards his side. Now that side of the slope is also unstable because that debris might come down. Watch the latest information about Blatten. It's quite interesting what they're doing. They're flying in boats with helicopters. They're trying to keep the river from clogging. And it's a sad part what they're telling us about the homes. So watch this in the end screen after this one. But there's more about Brienz. So worst case scenario, massive landslide. And this would cause severe damage to Brienz and the valley. That's what the officials are telling us. And the municipality is very concerned, that's how they call it, about the development of the speeds of the mountain. The speed of the mountain, the speed at which this mountain is coming down. That's what they're saying. We know if the speed is accelerating, that's an indicator that something big might be imminent. Since winter, this acceleration has increased continuously, but the last 6 weeks, there was significant precipitation, and that infiltrates these rocks. They're getting soaked. They're getting lubricated. So they're saying the risk of a major landslide has increased significantly. The so-called Eastern Plateau, they call it Plateau East, has been moving faster for days and weeks. That's what the local geologist that is monitoring this thing, Stefan Schneider, is saying. He says a chain of events could occur. Gosh, guys, we had that in Blatten, a chain reaction of events. The mountaintop fell on the glacier, and then the weight was getting too heavy, and the glacier, with all the rocks and debris, was mingling and then burying the village of Blatten. So now they also say a chain of events could occur. That means that the plateau could collapse onto the scree slope and accelerate it. Acceleration is never good because that could cause large masses of rock to fall. And that is very, very dangerous. And since this all happened so fast, like I said, 40 seconds in Blatten, they cannot risk to have anyone in there or even nearby. I hope they have calculated the evacuation zone large enough. They might rethink that because in Blatten they did not calculate it large enough, and they didn't calculate it right by a large margin. That's why the shepherd was lost. He was on the valley slope with his sheep outside the evacuation zone. But then the landslide got so big. So the worst case scenario is the big monster. Of course, there's a smaller worst case scenario. Smaller pieces could also fall. The experts are saying it all depends on the weather, like how humid the area is. But we know in the summer there's lots of rain. There's still melting snow as well. So the problem is that the Eastern Plateau is moving as a whole chunk, and that's not good. And that's why they say we cannot rule out the worst case scenario. That makes the worst case scenario more likely, because we're not seeing like the tip of it moving. No, the whole thing is moving. So should the situation worsen further, the municipal leadership would declare a phase blue. What is that? I mean, I thought red is already sounding very dangerous. Phase blue indicates an imminent event. So they're closely monitoring this, whether they have to change it to that. So what is an imminent event? A major imminent event such as rock falls or a major landslide. And we have a railway there. The Rhetien Railway, Albula line, and the cantonal, the provincial roads are in the valley. And if there's phase blue, they would have to be closed, of course. Because again, if it's such a major landslide, it somewhat could be unpredictable, as we have seen in Blatten. Had there been a railway line on the other side of the valley and how much debris came up there, that could have been very, very dangerous. They make it clear, the computer simulation that they have been running show that this time the entire village could be buried. They would not escape like they did last time when that landslide miraculously stopped in front of the village. The locals are frightened. It's still hard to accept this situation. I mean, they have been banned from spending the nights in their homes for a month now. The relocation still remains controversial because how they're regulating this right now, it's a kind of, I mean, I know they're trying their best, but I think they have to redo some of these rules, because those who change to relocate will never be able to return to Brienz, to the endangered village. And in order to get a new home, they would get 90% of their current home's value. But only, and that's the hard part, if their current home would be demolished. So even if there is no landslide, well, there will be a landslide, but if they decide this right now, right, they would have to demolish their beautiful unharmed home. So there were calls, and some people said, well, why don't you explode, like a controlled explosion on that landslide to have it come down? Maybe you can save the village. So experts are saying, well, there's two things. It's difficult. You can't send someone on foot there to drill the holes and place the explosives, because that whole landslide thing is very, very unstable. So it's very, very dangerous. I'm still thinking, couldn't you fly a helicopter over this with someone hanging there drilling the hole? But what the experts are saying, and this is kind of, guys, come on. They say, okay, what if we manage to make these explosives, put them in the holes, and then something goes wrong, we blow up that hill, and then there is damage. By blowing it up, we damage the village, or we bury the village. Who's paying for the damage? But, the thing is, if they now resettle everyone, they're already paying for the damage, right? So why not take a chance? Even if only half the village is buried, if they blow it up, they still can rebuild. I think that's the better option, because right now there are some regulations. You can never return to your village. You have to demolish your home. So it's already destroyed, right? So why not take your chance and blow up that hill? That's what I would do. I would take my chances. And then there's also another thing. If you get that new home 90% of your current value, that's hard enough. Because there were interviews with villagers, they said, well, I can't rebuild what I have right now. There were pictures, beautiful homes. They invested so much in their landscaping with rocks and stairs. Stunning. So they said, we can't afford to do this. That's not enough money. And also, they cannot pass it on. They need to keep it for 20 years. Otherwise, they have to pay back the money. And then there's villagers that say, I'm in my 70s. How am I supposed to do that? So I think they have to redo some of these rules. Probably they will. But this is putting strains on whole families. One farmer has a farm there with cows and everything. And it's not easy to find a new farm or to rent a new farm, to build a new farm, to find new farmland. He says, we're queuing everywhere and we just can't find a solution. So before Phase Red, he was commuting to his land every day and it was taking him an hour to drive there and an hour back. So they're all worried that Brienz is in major danger of becoming a ghost town. They say our houses are haunted houses already. Residents are angry that they have to commit to use their new home for 20 more years. They cannot sell it, not transfer it. It's crazy. So either you compensate the people because they're losing their homes, but don't take away their freedom. Because let's say the landslide didn't come down on Brienz. They could have sold their homes, they could have moved away, they could have transferred it to daughters, to sons, to whoever. And now they restrict them. Why? That's the question I ask. And to have the old house demolished, that is cruel. That is really cruel. That will break my heart. If that was my parents' and grandparents' house, the house that I grew up in, and I have to move away for my own safety, I get that. But I have to watch that home demolished and don't have a chance to take the chance and see if the landslide comes. Maybe the house will be spared and a piece of history. I think this is cruel. It's hurting me even reporting about this. So to everyone who lives in Switzerland, I'm very, very sorry for you guys if you're affected by this. And I hope they will change that. Yeah, they want to prevent speculation with the replacement buildings, but I don't think there will be much speculation. And even if they did that, they only got 90% of their home value. Let them do what they want to do. It's already hard enough. And of course, this is one of the first major relocations of this magnitude ever happening in Switzerland. And probably it will happen in Blatten as well. Of course, many people are grateful for the work of the authorities and they're there for them and they're doing great work. But many say, as absurd as it may sound right now, they think it would be better if the coming landslide destroyed the houses, because many things would be easier. Building insurance would have to step in. Insurance pays higher compensation than the government offers, than the public sector offers to the residents, and they would not be chained to their new house for 20 years. Many say we're not being actively helped. They feel powerless. People have building lots there, haven't built yet. It seems they're not receiving any compensation. Now that land is worthless because you will never get a building permit. The canton of Graubünden rejects the criticism. They say undeveloped building land poses no risk and compensation is not provided for by law. They're saying, and this is bureaucracy at best, at work, bureaucracy at work. They say that relocation thing is about reducing the risk of damage. So anyone who relocates must demolish their house. Therefore, no compensation for building land is possible because giving it up doesn't reduce the risk of damage. That's the logic of bureaucrats. That's not fair. Because if you're taking away the building permit, right? Yeah, I hope they figure this out. I really, really hope they figure this out. And they say, yeah, with the condition to demolish the houses if we move away, Brienz is being gradually abandoned. Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, that's why I said, blow the hill up, take your chances and see what happens. That was my update, guys. Check the link in the description. Interesting stuff about Blatten. It's sad when your home becomes a danger zone. Stay safe, guys. Check the links in the description if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.